Hey y'all, it's Monday morning, March 14th, and we welcome you to another edition of This Week at AMG. Thank you for joining us today. It's a special privilege and an opportunity to share with you some of the things that the Lord is doing around the world. Today, we are going to go to the Philippines. Bill Parsons, who leads our international missions efforts at the Home Office, recently had the opportunity to travel to the Philippines and follow up on some relief work that is being done as a result of a typhoon that struck the Philippines last year. Unfortunately, in that part of the world, disasters strike all the time, and part of our ministry is to reach out to people who have been devastated, who have lost homes, property, and sometimes loved ones, and help them get back on their feet and to show the love of Christ in a very tangible fashion. It is much needed, and God has used it amazingly over the years to draw people to Him. So today, let's hear from Bill as he tells us about his recent trip to the Philippines and what is happening as a result of the relief efforts after the most recent typhoon there.
Thank you, Tassos. As Tassos just mentioned, I was recently in the Philippines and had a privilege just to kind of get an update on the work that was going on to meet the needs of those affected by Typhoon Nona. What a privilege it was to see how God is working in the midst of such a disaster, but meeting people's needs and giving us the opportunity to share God's love. As you know, the devastation was pretty vast, and there was a whole bunch of opportunity, but AMG, like we always do, chose to focus on those areas where we already had established ministries. And we focused on the 7 barricades. Those are just communities that we already had a presence through our child care centers, through our national workers, that God had already placed us for such a time as this to be able to meet their needs. Our leaders there shared with me many testimonies of how God has used AMG to meet many basic needs on the early days. It was the early bringing in of food and basic sanitary products for just that they're needed at that time. Also in things like water. Also just helping with basic shelter. We had many people staying in our churches and in our development centers just so that because they had lost their homes. And so after the initial assessment, we noticed those 1,700 families that really needed our care. You know, we were able to kind of focus and hone in on those. After the initial needs were met, we started transitioning on helping them to kind of rebuild. The first step is obviously trying to help with rebuilding their shelter. You know, we know that's a basic need, and so we brought in things like chainsaws to help with the rebuilding. We rebuilt it in a way that they would have built it the first time, so it still stays very much like they had before, and it still meets their needs. It doesn't come in and bring something necessarily from the outside, but just coming alongside them and partnering with them and helping them to rebuild their lives. After that, one of the statements that we got, one of the letters that we got from one of the barangay leaders was that he was thanking AMG for coming in for their initial response, but he also just wanted to express his gratitude, not only for coming in and meeting the initial needs, but for staying, because we really desired, the way he put it is, we invested in the long-term success of all the residents there. And so I would want to ask you just to continue to pray, because the relief efforts are ongoing. Yes, the initial items have been delivered, and yes, people have been stabilized, and many things have happened, but there's still a whole bunch of things to be rebuilt, like their livelihoods. So we're still working in those areas. Like I said, we were there before, and we will remain there for quite some time to continue to invest in the people, helping them to explore opportunities to make a living. Some of their livelihoods were destroyed, you know, with the trees and everything else around them. So now we're trying to help them say, okay, how can we rebuild? How can we help in replanting? How can we help in exploring any other opportunities, using the skill sets that God's given you to be able to have a livelihood? So I just asked for prayer because, like I said, even though the typhoon and the disaster is out of the news, the relief continues to be ongoing. So pray for them. Continue as the Lord leads to give, and just pray as we seek to help to rebuild these communities. Also, just one of the other things that God does, because of when Christians respond and the compassion that is seen by the lost world, what they want to know is more about this Christ that we serve. And so it gives us many opportunities to share Christ. After we've shared in a very tangible way and been the hands and feet of Christ, we get to share the good news of the gospel in word form. And we've seen many people who their eyes have been opened to the light of the gospel. And so I just wanted you to pray for those, pray for the relief efforts, pray for the new believers in those areas, and pray for our pastors and our child care center workers that are there and that continue to minister. And then finally, I just wanted to say thank you for all that you've done, and I thank you for how God has used you to impact the lives of so many in the northern Samar area.
It is truly a privilege to be able to come alongside people at the point of their need when they feel such hurt and when they have experienced such devastation. It is truly a blessing the Lord is giving us to be His hand and feet to reach to them. Unfortunately, disasters happen all the time. We don't know when they will strike, but we know that they will, and we know that God wants us to help. So we have a disaster fund that we try to keep funded throughout the year. If you would like to support us, to support the disaster fund for AMG, so that we will be ready when the next disaster comes, and it will come, please visit our website at www.amginternational.org to find out more about it, or you can give us a call if you prefer. Well, that's it for this week, and we hope to see you next week at This Week at AMG.